You're listening to Turi Ryder's She Said What podcast. I'm Turi, along with Marci Persky. In this installment, Marci nearly loses her hair in a very rude awakening. Also, it seems that Kansas, where I was raised, has changed a lot. Not only can you fish there, now you can drink like a fish there.
You'll probably laugh at this, but I'm failing to see any humor.
Uh-oh.
So this morning I was having like my usual dream about my husband being married to some, voluptuous, long-haired young blonde woman, and I was the maid and all this, usual stuff. And all of a sudden something was pulling my hair. It was 6:30. I look at the clock, 6:30 in the morning with like one eyeball. And I thought it was a dog. And I'm like, the dogs never did that. What the heck? And I opened my eyes, and directly in my face is a goat. In my face, in my bedroom, eating my hair. At 6:30 in the morning, when they're supposed to be sleeping and fenced into their little coop out there in their house.
Well, would you have liked it better if it happened at 10 in the morning?
Yes, because I would have been awake. It's not the first thing you want to wake up to, It really isn't. And their breath isn't that good. I just want to throw that in there, too.
So what you're telling
my hair was slimy. I'm telling you that the goats have finally figured out how to open their gate.
I'm fascinated by the idea that it is not the fact that goats ate your hair that disturbs you. It's that they woke you up, because this is something that we have in common. I, too, worship sleep. I would rather sacrifice a lot of my hair in the name of sleep if that were the decision to be made. So it's surprising to hear that you value sleep more than I.
You mean my hair more than sleep?
No, you value sleep more than your hair.
Well, he wasn't really eating it. He was more like sucking on it, because they don't have bottom teeth.
And it's
or
attached
top teeth
to your head,
whatever.
Your hair.
Yes, it was attached to my head. It's just, it never stops around here.
Well, I mean, it could stop, but you don't want to hear how to stop it.
No, I love them. You should see how green our grass is back there. And it's because of them.
Yeah,
those little goat
poop.
raisins are, it's
Why don't you
fertilizer.
just take their feed and spread it out directly?
Spread it out directly where?
Where you want the grass to grow. That'd work just as well. It's food, alfalfa in and alfalfa out. What difference?
Nah, there's a big difference. But they eat Bermuda grass anyway.
Speaking of Bermuda grass and crops, I have two small accomplishments to report.
Ooh.
Very small. Number one is, if you've ever lived somewhere long ago and you feel like you forgot all about it, maybe you go back and it's been developed so that you can't find your way around your old hometown, or you don't recognize
the farm I grew up
the
on.
downtown. Right. So it's always kind of nice when you haven't forgotten absolutely everything about it. Even if that comes at the price, as it was in my case, of having to watch a TV series that I really did not care for anyway. This TV series, which I thought I would like better than I did, was supposedly created about and in my town where I went to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the wrong Manhattan, Kansas. And there's been a whole lot of publicity about this TV show because it features people who you wouldn't necessarily expect to find in Manhattan, Kansas. Transgender people who run gay clubs that are illicitly located in the Presbyterian Church, and biracial lesbian couples. It doesn't even matter.
Name the show.
I'm not. It doesn't even matter. People are calling me up now. All kinds of people going, you should watch the show. It takes place in Manhattan, Kansas. So I flip on the show, and the first thing that I recognize is that a lot has changed in Manhattan, Kansas. And I don't just mean the whole lesbian welcoming, biracial couple welcoming. First thing I recognize is that this is not the Manhattan, Kansas of my youth, because Kansas in my youth was virtually a dry state. There were ways you could buy a drink in a restaurant, but it was difficult. And these people are drinking all over the place. I'm like, No, no, this is not my childhood with beer pubs and people, going to pregame discos. No, 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 no.
Hurry.
What?
Did you live there during Prohibition?
It basically was, yes.
The
It,
Great Depression?
well, it's the Bible Belt, and a lot of those religions do not tolerate drinking. One of my best girlfriends was raised there, raised Baptist. When she got married, she got a full set of china and silver. And I was at her house one time and I said, "Where are your wine glasses?" She said, "Oh, you just got to use these jelly jar glasses." And I said, "What?" She said, "I forgot to tell you, when you get married and you're Baptist, nobody gives you wine glasses." So I got her wine glasses. Anyway, so this is the first thing I noticed. And then the second thing I noticed, and I mean, this is the sound of me patting myself on the back. One of the characters is the main character's father, and they farm in Kansas. And I'm looking at this farm and I'm thinking, something's wrong. This is corn. And this is how your childhood education imprints itself on you, because I cannot remember my children's birth dates, but I remember the cash crops of Kansas, and they don't grow corn to speak of. Plus, everything was way greener than it should have been. Plus, when they had the wide shots, there were rolling. It was rolling. It wasn't like flat, like you could play chess on it. It
Well, are
wasn't.
you sure this was in Manhattan and not
Aha!
in some studio lot?
Aha! Everyone is telling me, "Oh, you will love it. It's Manhattan, Kansas." So I wait for the credits, and then I see it. Thanks to the Illinois Film Board.
Illinois gave them more money to film than Kansas.
Well, it could be that.
I guarantee you that.
Well, whatever it is, I felt so proud of
It wasn't
myself.
Manhattan, Kansas. I remember I told Frankie all these stories about, growing up on the farm when I took him to go see it, like 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
It's all luxury homes. And the big swamp area where my brother and I used to, collect salamanders is a hospital that looked nothing like where I grew up. But Manhattan, Kansas moved to Illinois.
That was a good one. Plus, it brought out all of the inner hostility I had about
George
being raised in Manhattan, Kansas. My friends are all going, "Look what a nice, welcoming place it is," and I'm saying, maybe from 2000 on, but try being the kid who killed Jesus. That's no fun.
Yeah, I was one of those too.
Anyone who thinks that we are experiencing something new as a loss of civility did not grow up as a minority in Manhattan, Kansas.
There you go.
So
100%.
I not only have to explain what I grew up in and fight the Dorothy Toto thing. Now I have to explain that all the beauty and glory and accepting that they're showing you in this new show was hokum when I grew up. If you were gay, you were acceptable as the florist and the hairstylist. And even then, I'm sure that the ladies with their wash-in sets were probably trying to regularly find nice women from church for the florist and the hair salon operator.
I think I probably wouldn't live in Manhattan, Kansas if I was gay back then.
No, if you had a choice, you probably wouldn't. You'd move to some other state where you can grow corn.
Yes.
Okay, so that was one accomplishment today. My second accomplishment is so obscure that I'm almost afraid to discuss it, but I will.
I know you're not.
Have you ever managed to master a skill that you formerly thought was a completely, totally useless, absolutely pointless skill until you needed it?
Yeah, cleaning my house.
And that's because I was coming, right?
Yep.
Oh, dear.
Exactly.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Thank you very much.
Well, you do own cleaning products, so somebody must have waved a mop around once in a while. No? You just bought the product, like me with diet
books. I went
books.
around everybody's garbage and picked them out and put them underneath my sink, so you would think.
Okay. All right.
So what did you accomplish?
Well, as a child, my mother always worked, really, and it was cool. Now in retrospect, she worked, and so she didn't do a lot of the things that traditional housewives of her day would have done, like cooking a dinner every night. She would cook a dinner, maybe like a big pot of something that was recognizable on the first night, and definitely leftovers on the second night. And by the fourth night, after you'd stretched it, whatever you stretched it with, you were sure that it would keep you from starving, but not much else. So that was cuisine. But she did own a sewing box, even though The only sewing skills that I ever noticed her using were putting on the occasional popped button. If a button went, if you could find it, she would sew it back on. And if you couldn't find
Others
it,
were very similar, by the way.
if you if you couldn't find it, she had a few stray buttons. I don't know where they came from, and those would just have to do if they were more or less the same size. And that was the extent of her sewing. However, in
Yeah.
the sewing box, there was this mysterious thing. It was plastic. It was shaped like a plastic Easter egg. It had a handle on it. It was red and white plastic, Bakelite type of plastic. And I said, "What is this?" And she thought about it, and it took her several months before it came to her that this was a darning object for darning socks. And we all burst out laughing because nobody would have dreamed of darning a sock. You just got more socks.
You know what? I'm 100% positive I have one of those because I have my mom's sewing box and I had no idea what it was.
Well,
And there's
okay.
also like these little, not spools, but they're like pieces of paper and wound around them are like this really
Woolly.
nasty, itchy yarn.
Yeah.
And I bet that's what the socks were made of. And I'll put them in a box and send them to you. You can darn as many socks as you want, darn it.
Well, I happen to have, and normally I'm the same. Sock gets whole, sock leaves house. But
Yeah.
I have this pair of really fun socks that were my mother's in high school.
Okay.
And I wore them. I wore them when I was a skinny little creature, and they go way up, and I could wear them almost like stockings. They went up to the middle of my thigh, and I wear them now, even though they just fit a little bit over my knee because,
Oh, well, at least they're not anklets, right?
no, they're not anklets. And I regard that as an accomplishment.
There you go.
But the bottom of one of them started to wear out, and I did not want to get rid of these socks because they were something I've had all my life, and my mom had them in high school. So I went on YouTube and I thought, I think what you're supposed to do with socks when they get holes is you're supposed to darn them, because I've read a lot of books where women darned socks by the evening hours is what they did. And I've made a lot of fun. And what are you going to go do? Darn your socks now? Or,
Right after you make a doily.
right, exactly. It was an esoteric skill that I never thought I would need. But fortunately, there is a YouTube video.
There's a YouTube video for everything,
And
I swear.
Fortunately, I still have for my Girl Scout badge and something or other the proper kind of thread for this.
No way.
I found it.
I think I could probably send it to you. I'm sure that that's what's wound around the paper in my mom's sewing box
Well, you're
next to that
supposed
thing that I thought was maybe something for adults.
you're
Now that I find out that it's a darning tool.
It might have been for adults. Could have been for adults. Could have been. I mean, I went to the Vibrator Museum as a young woman and discovered that there were a lot of vacuum cleaners with attachments that were literally called the Housewife's Delight.
That sounds painful.
I
But
don't think you used anything you would recognize as a
I don't think they
vacuum
had Dysons
attachment.
back then.
Okay,
It really
so
does.
this is going to be an explicit podcast. Let's just stipulate to that. So I went to the YouTube video. I saw what I needed to do. I did not have the darning egg. So I thought about it. And what I ended up doing, and this is the perfect amalgam of the old and the new, I had a spare wireless mouse for my computer, which,
Oh,
yeah, is almost the
nice.
same as a
That's
heel
a good
shape.
idea.
Yeah. So this is my little house tip. If you ever find that you need to darn a sock, which I hope you never do because it's really kind of a pain in the neck, and you don't have a darning whatchamahoogie, because who does? Although
I do.
I gather I will
I do.
soon
I'm
have
gonna
one.
send it to you.
I'm very excited about this now because the other one is going to wear out soon, the other sock. And so I successfully darned my first sock with the aid of my Girl Scout era embroidery floss and a wireless computer mouse. And I want to report that I feel like I have accomplished something. And that my life is now so pathetic. Such a pathetic
that-
life.
You learned something on Google that they did long before there was
YouTube.
even electricity.
YouTube.
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 Sorry.
If you need to learn how to do anything from sock darning to brain surgery,
To how to trim goat hooves.
really? You learned
Oh,
how to trim
YouTube.
goat hooves
Yep.
on YouTube?
Yes, ma'am.
The horrible thing about YouTube is that some people really do think that they should be doing some things themselves that they really ought not
Yeah,
do.
there are a lot of those.
Really ought not
That's
be
true.
doing. If it's typically done by a physician, probably best not to be doing it yourself. Thanks for listening to Turi Ryder's She Said What podcast. If you'd like to do us a great favor, please leave us a good review wherever you hear this podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Turi Ryder's She Said What. And you might also enjoy my book, She Said What? A Life on the Air, which you can find any place you buy your books or on Amazon.